this is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're looking at a very unusual phone. Will it be unusual 2 years from now? Maybe yes, maybe no, but for now it's pretty unique. 6.3 inches. This is the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3. As you might guess from the name, 6.3-inch display. This is more like a tablet that happens to make voice calls, and we're going to look at it now. But first, check this out. How does that look? What do you think? Would you make a call like that? Probably not. Now that we've poked a little fun at our jumbo-sized smartphone friend here, I will say that clearly the Galaxy Mega 6.3 is for those of you who are looking primarily for a tablet first and for a phone secondarily. Obviously, you're probably going to use this with a Bluetooth headset and not hold it up to your head so much unless you just happen to have forgotten your headset. So, that said, that changes the game, doesn't it? If you're looking to use this just as a phone, it's going to be absurdly large. You know, I like large phones. I used to use the Galaxy Note 2, Galaxy S4 certainly all the time, the HTC One, and this is in another size class. So we're going to start off with a size comparison to give you an idea. Because one of the things I did is I took this to a big box store and I held it up to people and I asked them, would you use this as a phone? And some people looked at it and thought about it and then said, probably not. Some people laughed and said, no, but their kids might use it. And one or two people said, oh, yeah. So, really, seeing it in person is going to change what you think of the phone. First, we're going to start off with one of our smaller friends. Now, small is a 4.7-inch display. That's what we have right here. This is the Moto X, 4.7-inch smartphone. Currently, you would consider that to be one of the bigger phones, right? Well, look at the difference right there. It's certainly quite different. Next, to not even try to compare it with a phone, we have it next to the latest generation Nexus 7-inch tablet. So here we have 6.3 inches versus 7 inches. Granted, the Nexus 7 2013 edition does have a very tall chin and forehead area that kind of elongates the device, so it's taller than some other 7-inch tablets. But you get the idea. It's kind of falling somewhere in between so far, isn't it? But a little closer to the Nexus 7. And now here's the Samsung Galaxy S4 with a 5-inch Full HD display sitting on top of our Mega 6.3. So once again, you can see you're talking very large phone. Still easy to accidentally press things on the screen, but I have very large hands, and I can hold it like this. Now, one-handed operation, usually on the biggest of phones, even my Note 2, I can bring my thumb in pretty easily to do things. Gone. That's just not a possibility anymore. They do have the usual Samsung one-handed operation settings, so that's going to bring the dialer either to the right or the left side of the screen to make it easier to actually try to dial numbers. But anything beyond that really is going to be a two-handed operation. So you can see here, I keep touching them by accident. We have the usual Samsung capacitive buttons that pretty much disappear when the backlighting isn't on. I really wish they would start using a contrasting color. They're not the only manufacturer that's guilty of that, but obviously it highlights it. When we touch it, you can see them. We have our back button, we have our menu button, and we have a physical clicky home key right here. Pretty much this really looks like every other Samsung Galaxy phone in terms of design, just bigger. If we take a look at the side, the usual faux silver plastic here, volume rocker on this side. Bottom end we have our micro USB port for charging and for syncing stuff to your PC back and forth. Power buttons on this side. Up top we have a teeny weeny little IR port window. Wish it was a little bit bigger. This is for controlling your home theater gear. We'll talk about that later. 3.5mm combo headphone jack. The back is the usual shiny Samsung finish. This is the black edition. I have just cleaned this before starting this review, but you can already see it's picking up fingerprints. Kind of more like a gray stippled pattern here, metallic look, and it's also available in white. Here's our LED flash right there. It's an 8 megapixel camera, and this is our speaker, which is fairly loud. Thankfully, this is a big device. We expect to have a pretty loud speaker on it. As you'd expect from a Samsung Galaxy smartphone, not tablet, but smartphone, the back is removable and you have access to the battery. So it's the usual thin, pry-off kind of door. Don't worry, it bends but doesn't break. 3200 milliamp battery, large battery right there. And we have a stacked micro SIM card slot and micro SD card slot. We don't have a card in the micro SD card slot on top, so you can still see the SIM card, but that's right where it inserts, right in that area there. So you do have expandable storage. This has 16 gigs of internal storage. It has 1.5 gigs of RAM. Despite its jumbo size, it does not have a jumbo price tag. Those of you who are following this on the import market notice that really it wasn't all that expensive compared to other smartphones. And on AT&T, this is $149 with contract and $479 without contract, that's really relatively inexpensive, especially the off-contract pricing for a pretty nice and pretty large phablet. Now you don't get everything top end here. For example, you get 1.5 gigs of RAM, not 2 gigs of RAM. That's not a huge deal breaker, though we do have Samsung's TouchWiz running here in all of its glory, modifying the UI and, taking up some processing cycles, certainly. 1.7 gigahertz dual core CPU. It's not a quad core, but it is 1.7 gigahertz, and that's a Qualcomm Snapdragon. That's the 400 series, and this has 2 Crate 300 cores and Adreno 305 graphics, so medium on the brains in terms of horsepower. Not a slow phone, but not nearly as fast as the Galaxy S4, for example. Also, the display, no full HD here. This is 1280 by 720, 720p. That is not the end of the world. 7-inch tablets often have that resolution. Obviously not the top-of-the-line ones or the cutting-edge latest Nexus 7, but if you're looking at the Samsung Galaxy Tab 3 7-inch, that's going to be running, about the same resolution right there. That's 223 ppi, so that's not too bad. When it gets closer to 300, you're really at the sweet spot where everybody, no matter how good your vision is not going to see any jaggies in text and all that kind of thing. But still, it's not really a bad display. It's bright, it's colorful, it's the typical vibrant Samsung display. So really not too much of a complaint with clarity there. You do get all the Samsung bells and whistles in terms of software here. I was wondering if they would do that, since some of the stuff is pretty computational heavy. But for example, we have the multi-window feature, and you can see right here, I just dragged that. You can hide that tab if you want to, by the way, if it bugs you, just by pressing and holding the back key. And we can, see, make it go away just like that. Bring it back. And then this is all the applications that you can possibly have here. It doesn't support every app that you install on your device, just a certain set of pre-built-in ones, but those are some of the most popular ones. You can have your Gmail, your email, your Chrome web browser, Samsung's chat on the map, Google Maps application, S-Memo, so you can get split screen. And the nice thing is, really, this screen, like the Note 2, only maybe even more so, really is well suited. Even on the Galaxy S4, I find that having 2 apps running side by side, screen's not really that big. It's a better experience on something that's tablet-like, like this. So here we have our gallery running, and say I want to bring out something else. I want S-Memos. Just drag it over here. And now I can take a memo about a video that I'm watching, for example. A variety of uses for this kind of thing, but obviously the screen size kind of works well and works in portrait and landscape mode. So there's a feature that really does come to life. We also have Air View on here. You can hover over something to get information about it. If you're on a web page, if you want to temporarily zoom on something, that works. We have Smart Stay. It uses the front camera to keep an eye on you. If you're looking at the screen, it won't shut the screen off. Very nice feature like that. We do have S-Voice on board right here. Samsung's attempt at voice command, including the ability to listen even when you haven't tapped a button to activate that feature. But unlike the Moto X, which does an awesome job with that, and the Droid Ultra, it's really hit or miss. It's actually pretty hard to wake it up. The listening voice command stuff's not so good. And it will consume quite a bit of battery power if you have it set to always listen. So you're really better off using the touch microphone thing. Honestly, I ignore S-Voice and I just use Google's voice command stuff. Works so much better for me. In terms of software, this is an AT&T phone, so you're going to get AT&T software on here, plus all the Samsung apps like Samsung's Hub, Samsung Apps, because they'd love to have you download stuff from their app store instead of Google Play. You can get multimedia stuff from them, movies, videos, Samsung that is. Samsung likes to bundle Flipboard, which is a very nice news reader, very visual, so we won't complain about that. We have a shortcut to Wild Tangent Games. They've been unescapable on Windows desktops, and they're creeping into everything now. Samsung's Group Play for sharing. All the Google apps are here. Obviously, you got your Google Plus Photos, Gmail, Google Maps, Google Navigation. My Files, which is Samsung's file browser. My AT&T for account management. All the Google Play movies, books, media. As you notice, Samsung's S-Memo, no S Pen here, no digital pen for writing on it. You could use a capacitive stylus if you want to, but the S-Memo app's there nonetheless. We've got Samsung's Translator, which actually does a decent job of language translation on here. There's story albums, sort of like scrapbooking digitally on your device. TripAdvisor is preloaded as well. Yellow Pages Mobile, can't escape that. AT&T Drive, AT&T Family Maps, AT&T Locker, AT&T Navigation, AT&T Code Scanner, AT&T Ready to Go. Have I said AT&T enough? But wait, more. AT&T Smart Wi-Fi. So out of our 16 gigs of storage, now I have put on Real Racing 3, which takes up a gig of space right there. Everything else I put on is relatively smaller, but you can see that all of Samsung's pre-bundled software takes up some space along with AT&T's. So this says 8.5 gigs free. If you didn't have a 1 gig game on here, you'd be about 9.5 to almost 10 gigs of space. Samsung's usual customized settings are here. Instead of the usual way of a long continuous strip of settings, it's divided in tabs because there's so many settings here that are available. We have NFC, so we have control over that. Samsung's S-Beam sharing. Screen mirroring, we have keys over Wi-Fi and the usual controls for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. My device is your more normal stuff. For example, we can get the sound and we can stop it from making those blip blip sounds every time we touch the screen, which is nice. Control your accounts, and more is everything that they couldn't think of to put in some other tabs. So we have battery, storage information, security about your device. As you can see here, it's a little bit faint, but we have Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean on board. Fairly recent, not 4.3. Just about nothing except for a Nexus device has that right now, so we're not going to complain about that. In terms of performance and responsiveness, generally pretty good. Sometimes see a little bit of micro lag, but nothing that I complain about. You get 2 web browsers on here, by the way. You get the old WebKit web browser, and you get Google Chrome, which is a newer version that Google wishes everybody would use, but manufacturers still go with the old WebKit web browser because they can customize it more. For example, we have this strip over here, which is AT&T's little sharing strip, which it used to be you could get rid of this in settings, and I haven't found a way to get rid of it. Now also at the WebKit web browser, it used to be you could sideload Adobe Flash Player. I did do that, and we have a broken symbol right there. There's actually no setting for plugins anymore on the WebKit web browser. They took that away and it's not working. So if you need Adobe Flash, you're going to have to install Firefox or a boat browser, one of those. The keyboard on screen, absolutely immense, no matter what orientation you use it in. And just like the Note 2 family, you have a dedicated number row up there, which is no press holding to get your alternate numbers. Really easy to use, really, really. If you had trouble with small screen keyboards before, this is not going to be a problem for you. And we'll check out our website so you can see how it does some streaming video. And there's that little annoying strip again, which will eventually auto-hide, but it's easy to accidentally bring it up again, unfortunately. So big screen makes it easier to see text. Text is not too terribly jaggy, as you can see here. It's not bad at all. The colors are pleasing. Also quite a bright display. Responsive for pinch zooming. Gets the job done. And we'll take a look at our video review of the Moto X to see how streaming video playback goes. And we're doing all of this over AT&T LTE 4G network, which is a good network in our area. We tend to get very good speeds. You can see volume is about 3/4 to 80% right now. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're looking at the Moto X. Finally, available first on AT&T in the United States. It's $199 with contract. For the 16 gig version, $249 for the 32 Certainly gig big version. picture experience, isn't
And
it?
if you go to the store, you can get it, well, like we did right here. We have the...
So you get the idea. If you're going to use this to watch movies a lot, you're going to love it. Even if it's not super duper high resolution with the ultimate in pixel density, it's a nice enough screen, really big, and it's certainly more fun than watching a movie, say, on a 4.5-inch display. Software is the usual Samsung TouchWiz stuff. If you use the Samsung Galaxy S3, S4, a Note, or a Note 2, it's all going to look pretty familiar to you. You can see why using one-handed operation would make sense, because you can get things over to one side of the screen or the other to make it a little bit easier if you're trying to use it with one hand. Even then it's dubious. Let's turn that option on right now. So we'll go to one-handed operation, and we'll turn that on for a keypad and in-call buttons. You can also use it for the calculator, obviously, and also for the unlock pattern. And there you go. They have made it really small, haven't they? So it makes it more doable to do like this. And if you tap there, you can switch sides, so you don't have to choose left-handed, right-handed anymore. That's just how you move it. We have Samsung's usual highly customized calendar here. Some people hate it, some people love it. I actually tend to like it a lot. It makes it much easier to see actual appointments that are on your screen here, and well, who could beat that? You know, it's just much more useful. You have week views, you have agenda views, you have day views, that kind of stuff. So, nicely done. Call quality has been excellent. I was a little bit worried that holding this against my face to make a call, to actually test the handset, that I'd have trouble aligning the speaker and the mic, but really I had absolutely no problems whatsoever, and call quality was very good. So we're going to take a look at data speeds right now, which so far have been good for us in tests. And we actually had better results downstairs, which is unusual. That's more like our usual high, over 20 megabit per second up and down. So we're going to try a different server and see if that helps us. We can get even better speeds. I'm still standing right about there right now. Well, nothing to sneeze at, not bad, but not as impressive as we got a little while ago. Probably has more to do with the network, given the fact that the phone hasn't changed in the past hour. And if you're using Samsung's video player, by the way, 1080p trailer looks very good. You have the picture in a picture function right here, basically the floating video. And there it is on our home screen. And again, it kind of makes more sense here. I can pick it up and drag it around. I can even resize it, because you've got a screen that big, and you can actually timeshare with your video playback. So, neat parlor trick. Our 7.5-ounce tablet can also act as a remote. Again, there's a little teeny IR window up top. And it has content discovery over here. You tell it who your cable provider is if you have one. And we've got some of its suggestions over here. And if we tap over here, we can get our AV remote. Those got to be the biggest buttons you have ever seen. And if you want to switch between your remotes, there's a little grabby thing right here. So you can see we can access our DVR controls. And if we want to add more remotes, we can hit Add Device. So you can control your DVD player, your Blu-ray player, your AV receiver, your streaming media player, and your air conditioner. Go figure, but there it is. The Galaxy Mega 6.3 has dual-band Wi-Fi 802.11ac. That's nice to see on a phone that isn't top of the line in terms of pricing. It has Bluetooth 4.0. Of course, it has a GPS on NFC as well. On the front, we have a 1.9 megapixel camera. On the rear, we have the 8 megapixel camera. In terms of software, it's like what you've seen on other Galaxy phones. And in terms of quality, it's fairly comparable to the Samsung Galaxy Note 2, which has the same set of cameras. In terms of benchmarks, the phone did reasonably well, quadrant 8465. Now, you're looking at over 12,000 on the Samsung Galaxy S4, but that's a similar number to the Moto X. And honestly, it's got more than enough horsepower here to play today's 3D games, no problem. On Antutu, that score wasn't too impressive at 13,788. We've seen close to 20,000 on some of the fastest phones, including even the Moto X, which does well in Antutu. GL Benchmark, Graphics Bench as it's called now, the Egypt off-screen test, we got 17 frames per second, pretty slow. And for the on-screen test, 26. Now, some phones do twice as well as that, even almost 3 times as fast as that. But then again, really, still when playing games, mostly it's been good. We've seen a little stuttering in Real Racing 3, and we'll show you that. SunSpider JavaScript test, 1011. 3D Mark Ice Storm test, 5344 and 22.7 frames per second on the demo. Again, that's about half the speed of the Moto X, which isn't the fastest of today's smartphones, the fastest being the HTC One and the Galaxy S4. But here, what you're really going for is the big screen experience, or the giant screen experience, rather than the best in performance. If they had given you a processor that was fast, your battery life would have been terrible. So right now, if you want to screen this humongous and high performance, it's just going to be a little challenging. Here's our camera UI. Samsung does a pretty good job with that. We can tap up here and choose a bunch of different color effects. We've got more settings over here. Flash control, switching between video, all that kind of thing. We can tap to focus. Press the button there. If we switch mode, here it is, all the different effects: night mode, sports mode, panorama mode, HDR, Sound and shot. Beauty face. Continuous shooting. So you've got a lot to work with there. And again, it's a pretty good camera. I do notice that outdoors, sometimes it will blow out the highlights a little bit. That's been a problem with Samsung's 8 megapixel camera. But overall, pleasing enough camera. Not the top of the line, not like the Galaxy S4 camera, but still pretty darn good. It can also shoot 1080p video from the rear camera, 720p video from the front camera. So now we're going to test out Real Racing 3, which is a fairly demanding and current 3D racing game. Nice and colorful display, pretty sharp, very nice contrast, good blacks. Notice no rear view mirrors. We haven't seen that for a while. I don't know if they're going to add support for this processor or if they think it's going to be too much. We'll see what the frame rates are like, and that might give us a hint as to whether such a thing is possible. This race is a good test because there are a lot of cars on the field which can bring down the frame rates. And we'll cheat a little to get ahead. Overall, it's mostly managing pretty good frame rates. It is 1.7 gigahertz dual core with Adreno 305 graphics. That's not exactly something to sneeze at. So looking pretty playable overall, probably something you would want to do with something that has such a big screen. That's Real Racing 3 on the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3. And now we're playing Shadowgun Dead Zone. Multiplayer here is a deathmatch, so this might not last too long. We'll find out. But it's handling it quite well. I'm doing it over, again, AT&T LTE network, so it's playing it nicely enough. And handling the frame rates. Shadowgun Dead Zone. Now here's something else you just might want to do with something that has a 6.3-inch screen, reading books, and we're using Google Books right here, and the text is actually surprisingly nice and sharp. I have to say this display has good contrast, just the slightest pinkish cast, which a lot of people actually like when they're reading. They find it a little softer on the eyes. Illustrations look good, so not a bad experience, to be honest, for reading books at all. Now, as we mentioned, this has a 3200 milliamp battery inside. It is removable. You can swap in a spare if you want. We're still doing battery tests on this, but yeah, that's a pretty big battery. It might not impress Note 2 owners all that much, but this is a very big screen, and still the 1.7 gigahertz dual core is somewhat demanding. So we're finding it just about makes it through the day. It's not going to get you extra days on a charge because it is driving a really pretty decent CPU on here, LTE 4G, and a huge display. So that's the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3. It's available today on AT&T. Very affordable prices. We mentioned it's not a mega price, and you do literally get a lot for your money here. So if you are one of those people who really primarily needs a tablet first, you're happy with the Bluetooth headset for calls, it's really not such a bad buy at all. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review of the Mega 6.3, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.